Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name is Ivana. Today is February the 4th, and we're almost through another week. Something, though, that we haven't talked about this week is Amazon, or at least we haven't talked about it here. Now, a lot of you have maybe seen in the news that there is a vote for the Bessemer Fulfillment Center, Amazon Fulfillment Center voting on a union next week. That has been kind of big in the news lately. National outlets are even covering this. So I thought it would be a good time to bring our own Bill Thornton on. He is our business reporter, and he has been staying on top of this Amazon situation, this vote. And I thought he could really break it down for us today and tell us what this means for the average Alabamian, the average Amazon customer. So, Bill, thank you so much for coming on today, explaining this. This is something that I think a lot of people who are not maybe involved with the union or who are not in a business that often has unionization, we don't know as much about it.
Well, most people who use Amazon, this probably won't mean anything to them in terms of, ordering anything or, how most people use Amazon. It's not going to, it probably won't feel like it affects them. What it affects, though, is the future of e-commerce because, we live in Alabama. Alabama has a history of union activity, but Alabama now is known more as a pro-business state. Businesses come here basically with an expectation that there's not going to be a lot of union activity. And Amazon especially, I think it was 2014, the last time there was a union vote at an Amazon facility and was defeated. So this is getting a lot of attention basically for what it could mean for the future of e-commerce. If e-commerce workers begin organizing, then that could, affect the future of not just Amazon, but other companies that have really carved out a space in, e-retail and e-commerce. If we're being serious here, this has been a rapidly expanding part of our economy for the last 20 years. And if you think about how much we rely on Amazon, especially now, you begin to see where the importance of this is coming from.
I think it's safe to say that during the year 2020 and then so far even into 2021 and probably for at least a little bit of the foreseeable future, e-commerce, Amazon is probably doing much better now and more people are using it that have never used it before. And I think that just is something that all shows the changing of times, right? But also is just, look, in a pinch, I don't have to go out to the grocery store. If I feel that, my health is not in a position where I need to do that or should do that, I order on Amazon. I've got Amazon Pantry. I can get it from Whole Foods. That entire brand has just really grown on that premise of fast, quick delivery that's affordable and that also doesn't, it doesn't impede your safety, right? So over the last year, with the increase in Amazon orders, with the increase in just online shopping in general, do you think that this vote would have happened without all of that? Or do you think that this vote, this talk of unionization is dependent on that kind of 2020 surge?
Well, that's an interesting question because, the Bessemer Amazon Fulfillment Center did not open until absolutely the almost beginning of the pandemic. It was already, under construction and it was slated to open in March of last year. Well, when it opened, it was, the very beginning almost of the lockdown. And if you look at some of the filings that Amazon made during the preliminaries of the union vote, you know that they were already running at a very peak, demand in terms of everyone ordering, just about everything. I mean, remember Amazon began as a retail site for books, but now it is, this all-encompassing site where you can order just about anything. And it's an interesting question in that when Amazon came to Alabama, they probably had an expectation this would not be on their radar in terms of a union vote. But when you talk to people who work there, they have obviously had to, kick it into overdrive from the beginning in terms of demand, in terms of the work required. And then you have this union drive, which really picked up speed during the Christmas season, which, it's through the roof. usually for retail, but during pandemic for Amazon, it was even better from their perspective in terms of demand. So I asked some people, I said, do you think this would have happened if there hadn't been a pandemic? And they couldn't really say one way or another because, they thought it wasn't there before the pandemic. So it's hard to know. But I think the pandemic probably had something to do with just how much has been asked of employees almost from the beginning at this particular place.
I think that's really interesting because look, I'm looking at my desk right now. I'm going to say a solid like 70 to 80% of the junk that is on this desk is from Amazon. Is at least all of it, I'm sure, probably ordered online, but I'm going to say that 60, 70% all from Amazon. I've got a whole thing of pins over here. I've got a blender bottle. I've got makeup over here. It is all just ordered from Amazon. And I honestly don't know what I think most people would do at this point, especially during a pandemic, if we didn't have an outlet like that. So you said that the last time there was an Amazon center that voted on a union was in 2014, I believe.
Hmm.
I'm guessing that vote did not happen, or that vote did not go through.
Yeah, and you got to remember, of course, it was a different economy, different time. Amazon is a much bigger corporation now. Um, when you talk about how much demand you personally have for Amazon, maybe you'd like to see these books here. Uh, you know, I'm old enough that I remember when Amazon became a thing. I remember before Amazon became a thing. If the bookstore didn't have the book that you wanted, you went to another bookstore, and if they didn't have it, there were ways to order books, but you didn't have anywhere near the kind of just sheer, the avenues that you have for, just wild, exotic, anything basically that you can find on Amazon. And, this is kind of a tipping point when you consider just how big Amazon is as a corporation, the kind of power it has, the kind of money that's coming in. It's funny, just 2 days ago, you had the announcement that Jeff Bezos is stepping down as CEO. He's becoming, an executive with the company that allows him to kind of follow some of his other pursuits and everything. I'm sure he's there, obviously, but Jeff Bezos has become a major figure. He's on the order of a Bill Gates. He's on the order of Zuckerberg. He is a titan of industry, basically the way we would talk about it, say 50 years ago or so. So when that announcement came down, it was funny. The reaction among the people who are going for this union is they were saying, well, he thinks that now would be a good time to step down because the business is going to change if we organize. We're going to force some changes on them. It's going to change how they do business. So they kind of saw the two things connected.
That's really interesting. Also, just in all honesty, there was not very much that I knew about unions before we started talking about this, right? Before this kind of came to the forefront of our community and our news cycle. But I had a question for you. I'm going to take a quick break to look at a couple of these comments. I think it's so interesting because I have several people that are so pro-union. I have several people that are very against this. So I think it's interesting that people really feel strongly one way or the other. But some of the essence of some of these comments that are against this union, rather, are really worried about price increases on Amazon due to this. If this union happens, worried that their prices will go up. Maybe that could be on a specific item, maybe on your Prime. Many of us have nowadays, and I personally think it's worth it 100% right now. But are we going to price there?
You kind of broke up there, but I think your question is what kind of effect it'll have on. Yeah. Okay. So the idea that people have that union organization leads to price increases, that's historically the idea is that, you get that from the auto industry. I think a lot of the anti-union sentiment comes from industrial workers who worked for unions and the effect that it had on not just the product, but also on the pricing. I think there are some legitimate concerns there, but we're not talking about cars. We're not talking about steel. We're not talking about, we're talking about a a retail service that moves merchandise to people. And part of, we could also have a discussion about what pricing at Amazon has done to retail outlets, brick and mortar stores. The fact that Amazon is able to sell for the price that they do has really affected malls. It's affected big box retailers. It's affected mom and pop stores. So, there's a trade-off here in terms of, how you think workers should be treated, but also, how you think whether the what some people call the outsized influence that Amazon has on commerce, because it's able to sell at the price that it does, what kind of effect it already has had on the economy.
That's interesting, and I am a huge advocate for malls. I know that we joke sometimes that me and one of my colleagues, Carol Robinson, are going to keep some of these malls alive because we love a good in-person shopping trip. But there are a lot of people that aren't like us and that do just prefer to do everything online, and I totally understand that. So basically, it seems like what you're saying is we're just going to have to wait and see about that price increase.
Well, okay, so some of this is trade-off. Okay. Do if you are working for a company, you're definitely going to want to be in a better position in terms of your benefits, in terms of your pay and everything. And if you're working at a place where you don't think your voice is being heard, then a union is going to make sense to you on that level. On the other hand, if you're a consumer, you want the best price and you want the best quality. Okay. So if you think a union is going to affect the quality of the delivery or the quality of the shipping and everything, then you would be concerned about it, and also obviously the price. But anytime there's any kind of major change in the economy, you're going to have to look at your trade-off factors. What am I getting in exchange for this? Amazon is not the only game in town in terms of ordering things. So I doubt, I'm hesitant to say one way or another what kind of effect it would have if there is a union there, if it spreads to other parts of Amazon's corporation or whatever. I know that Amazon does not want to have this discussion, and for obvious reasons, because if you have this, then your ability to control your workforce begins to spiral out of your control. But again, the consumer has more power in this case because you don't have to buy there. You have other places that you can go. Will it be as convenient as Amazon? Will it have as much variety as Amazon? That's another thing altogether. But the way our e-marketplace works, you have so many options still to choose from.
There's a question here from, I believe, from Brandon. It's come out of my view at this point. It was from Brandon, and this is a great question. I probably should have started this video off with this question, but he says, "What are the pros and cons of the union vote?"
Talking about for the worker, the pros obviously are collective bargaining. You have somebody who's representing you in terms of workplace conditions, in terms of what your pay is, what your benefits are, what your off time is. If you have a grievance in your particular job, you can work through the union to kind of mediate for you. Otherwise, it's all up to you. You have the fact that it's not just you, it's all the other people in the union that's also a part of this and is affected by the situation. The cons of it, obviously, we've gone through is what kind of effect does it have on price? What kind of effect does it have on quality? What kind of effect does it have on just the overall product? And all of those are legitimate concerns. If we were having this discussion 100 years ago about the pros and cons of a union, the role of the worker would have been a totally different place in terms of how many hours a week you work, what kind of pay you have a reason to expect, any kind of benefits, any kind of off time. The worker was in a much worse position because of unions. You move ahead about 50 or 60 years, though, and then you begin to see some of the complaints that people have about unions, in that what it did to what unions did to the Teamsters, or the auto industry or whatever. And I'm not making any judgments about those things. I'm talking about that's where some of the complaints came in terms of people who do not support unions. And also what rubs people the wrong way is the political aspects of unions, where they were very vocal about throwing their support behind political parties. If I am in a union and I work for a company, do I necessarily want my union dues going to support this political program that I don't support personally? Those are legitimate concerns as well. So, it's a very complicated argument in terms of who do you want representing you and what interests do you want being represented. And, unions are nowhere near the kind of force that they were in politics and in American life that they were, say, in the 50s and 60s. And part of that has to do with the fact that the economy has changed, but it also has to do with the backlash that came because of the power that unions had. If you watched The Irishman on Netflix, for example, with Jimmy Hoffa, you begin to see some of the things that people who are critics of unions talk about sometimes. Now, of course, that's a movie, but it comes from a certain place. And that's what a lot of people think of when they think about unions in a negative light.
Sorry if you can hear the construction happening across the street from me. It is right in front of me. So sorry if that is distracting to anybody, but that was a great breakdown of that. And I know it's hard to weigh the pros and cons, like you said, Bill, because it depends. Are you a customer? Are you a union member? Are you a company? All of those answers are different. I am interested. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say another thing too is that you have to understand too that the role of a union in 2021 is necessarily going to be different than it would be in, say, 1955, 1965, for lots of different reasons, because of the way the economy is, but also the way people connect and talk, and social media would change it. Just the needs that workers have now. There's an expectation of a 40-hour work week and benefits for full-time employees and medical and all those things. And unions have some, claim as that those things exist because unions existed. You don't have people, working the way that they did in sweatshops and steel plants and other places like in 1900 and, the 1800s. And a lot of that is because of union organization. By the same token, if you have a union in 2021, it's going to look different than it did 50 years ago, 100 years ago, like anything else. So I think the critics of unions have a point, but also the people who are supporters of unions have a point in that, the economy continues to change. And as it changes, workers are going to need a voice, for whatever happens, whether it's individual or collectively.
I am looking through these comments and I have a question I've got Christina, Candace, and Brittany. They all seem to work at this center, at this Amazon fulfillment center in Bessemer. So please let me know if y'all work for there, because they seem to have talking about conditions there. And we've got Candace saying that she gets raises every 6 months, saying everything's, going well there. So I'd love to hear more from y'all and about your personal experience there. Now, Bill, something that I think is also important to note here is that we know where the old Century Plaza Mall is over on the eastern side of Birmingham. There is an Amazon distribution center planned for construction there. Number one, what is the difference in a fulfillment center and a distribution center? And number two, if they decide to unionize at that Bessemer Center, would it affect the Century Plaza site, that East Birmingham Center?
There's been no indication from the company that anything would change. Any of their plans would change. They're already moving earth. They're involved in construction over there. So, the union vote at the Amazon Fulfillment Center in Bessemer affects the fulfillment center in Bessemer. It does not affect Amazon as a corporation. It only affects that place. And it only affects, by the way, the people who vote to be in the union, who pay their dues and everything. That doesn't mean that everybody at the place will be represented by this union. Unions, come into companies and they represent the members who are in the union. Now, obviously, whatever contract they negotiate will affect the other people there as well, either directly or indirectly. Now, to your other point, which was what's the difference between a fulfillment center and a distribution center? Obviously, a fulfillment center is where you fulfill the order. It's where the order comes in. You make sure that the order has been filled, that the person gets what they want. It's packaged. It's routed and everything. Distribution is getting it to you. I think that's probably the simplest way. I would imagine there's probably more to it than that, but I think that's the difference between the two.
Christina, Latrice, and Brittany all say they do work there. And this is so interesting to me because I say Candace says that she's gotten 2 bonuses within the last 6 months, said it's a really good place to work. Got Christina, Amazon's a great place to work. So it's really interesting seeing people that are working there and telling us about their experiences there and what they think. So interesting there. Christina also says that associates move up quick, which is awesome to hear as well. Quick question I will address from Jim. He just asked if we are sponsored by Amazon, and that is that we are not sponsored by Amazon. This is not a sponsored or a branded anything like that show or video. So no, I get nothing out of this. Bill gets nothing out of this. We work for the news, and we are just reporting what is happening around Birmingham, around our state. So I'll quickly go ahead.
I was just going to say, talking about the individuals working for the company. If you work for a large company, now this union vote is going to involve about 5,000 people. Okay. Now, if you randomly pick out 5,000 people on the street, they're all going to have different views. They're all going to see things different ways. For some people working in a company, I never had it so good. I've got great benefits, and I get raises for merit increases and things like that, and they're going to be positive on their position. Somebody else, may see it differently. They may be getting the same raises, but they may not see it in quite the same way. People differ, and that's part of this position here is that some people are going to see a union drive as something that they want to participate in, and some people are going to see it positively. Some people are going to see it negatively, and that's okay because we all have different opinions about how things should go.
I want to talk a couple of logistics really fast before I let you go, and that is that the vote begins on Monday. Number 1, how long is the voting period? Number 2, when do we expect to know if this union's going to happen or not?
Well, the pandemic has had an effect on how the voting would go, just like it had an effect on the presidential election. Originally, Amazon wanted or petitioned to have this vote, under a tent in the parking lot in a specific time. But because of the pandemic, the National Labor Relations Board has a certain way to have votes, and this is, I think, the largest that they have undertaken since the pandemic started. So they're going to have mail-in ballots. They are mailing the ballots to the employees, and the employees have through March to return them. They gave them a long latitude in terms of how long to get the ballots back because of the way the mail has been running lately, and also just because you have so many voting to make it as convenient as possible. And this is not just full time. This involves part-time workers and other positions that are at Amazon.
So do we know how many people? I know you said about 5,000 people are expected to participate in that vote. Is that about the amount of people that work at that center?
Well, originally, I think they had called for a much smaller pool of about 1,500 employees, but then they expanded it to pretty much, as widely as possible for the people. Now we're talking about a massive facility, so this is drivers, this is people who work inside, this is supervisors, this is I think it includes everybody basically.
Can quick question too? I know I said before I let you go, but I have one more that I think is important. Can we still work there without belonging to a union?
Yes.
And that's assuming that the union vote does pass, excuse me.
Well, I mean, if a union is basically an organization within a company, it's not part of the company, but you can work anywhere and not be represented by somebody. There the teachers that belong to teacher unions and there are teachers that are not in the union. There are all kinds of examples that you can point to where people work at a place that has a union, but they're not members. So it's not mandatory.
And so you don't have to pay dues if you're not a member.
No.
Bill, thank you so much for sharing all your information on this. We know that we're going to get plenty more from you next week when this vote begins. And I'm sure we'll have more coverage of that through March as that voting period goes. And then we'll have to just see what happens.
Thanks.
Bill, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for dealing with the construction sounds outside of my window, and we will see you tomorrow.